Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of such novels as Touch Your Nose and Jacoby Street, and founder of Engine Books. Let's see what we have today. Hello, we are here on a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. We have three authors from the Breakwater Books collection, Us Now, stories from the Quilted Collective on the line. And they're going to be answering some of the questions most posed by you, the listeners of the Write Project podcast. On the line, we have Tzu-Hao, we have Xaiver Michael Campbell, and we have Dr. Richard Elcock, as well as collection editor Lisa Moore. Let's begin.
Richard, what was the first book you remember that made you cry? If any.
I believe it would have been a book by Mildred D. Taylor called Let the Circle Be Unbroken. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it and might be inclined to do so. But essentially it is set in the American South, kind of in the heat of the civil rights movements of the 1950s and 60s. And certainly there's some very poignant moments in the book that I found extremely moving at the time I was reading that. And I still remember reading that in like grade 5, and it just comes right back like it was yesterday. Absolutely. Great piece of literature for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that would do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want to remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Richard. And what did you think, Lisa?
Black Beauty.
Wow, that's a callback. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story about a horse.
Yeah.
And I remember breaking my heart. But I guess probably a lot of girls felt that way about that book. Maybe boys did too, but I know a lot of girls did. Girls and horses.
Did, yeah. Thank you very much, Lisa. And what did you think, Xaiver?
That made me cry.
If any.
If any. Wow. Memoirs of a Geisha.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That one to do it. Yeah, for sure. That one almost broke me, I gotta say. Yeah.
I read it in what grade was I in? Maybe 9th or 10th grade or something.
It feels young. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, whoa. This book's sad. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like it.
Thank you very much, Xaiver. And what did you think, Sue?
There aren't that many that does that for me, to be honest. I mean, I find most books will touch and engage me emotionally, but for me to get really connected to a character, my goodness. I know. It's the very last book in a fantasy series written by Robin Hobbs, and it started probably 20 plus years ago with these two characters, and there's I think 3 or 4 arcs that features their growth and development as characters as they literally grow old together and apart and together, and all of their different adventures. So the last book had just came out probably 2 years ago, and it wasn't without spoiling the story, I don't think people would call it a happy ending, but it was a very happy ending for me because it's how I felt it should always have ended for them. So
okay.
Yeah.
I read a lot, and I read lit fiction. It's not about me, but I always end up answering in response anyway. Something that can books that make me cry are usually like bittersweet romances, like Time Traveler's Wife and Blankets and stuff like that. Just Blankets left me in a total wreck. But I like superhero stuff. I'll sit down, if I want to switch my brain off, I'll turn on Avengers or Doctor Who or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Any narrative where the people you've lost come back, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like oh, we like Doctor Who episode where a town is obliterated in a bombing, and through the jigs and the reels, everyone comes back to life by the end, or like Avengers Endgame when everyone comes back to life. That whole oh, no, we undid it. Everyone came back. That is just, I can watch the same thing 50 times, and every time I'll be a sobbing mess. I don't know why. I feel like that's a human need, though. I feel like the reason that narrative plays out so much in genre fiction is because that's if there's one fantastical wish, it's that kind of to bring back the scars of war kind of thing, and say okay, we can't undo what we learned and what happened, but if we could just bring everyone back, everyone in one big snap kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I see the appeal of it, but I personally don't. I mean, now that we're talking about the Marvel movies, I think they're fantastic. But the genre that you're speaking of, where you can, I guess, not undo your mistake, just kind of bring things back. To me, that's in a way it does yourself a little bit of disservice. I think. I mean, so. Since we're talking about comic books, I don't know if you've ever heard of a series called Full Metal Alchemist. It's
yes.
Yeah. So one of the really famous line in here is that you don't learn a lesson without sacrifice, and I think that is incredibly true in just about anything that you do. And if without the sacrifice, you take it for granted, and then you don't really achieve true growth. So it's a double-edged knife, I guess, that you have to suffer through the loss, but you're in a way better for it, maybe not more whole for it, but
maybe the wish is that we could cure that part of the human condition, that we could at some point learn without having to go through. I teach writing classes, and there's this concept called the Harmon Circle, where it's just the hero's journey but trimmed down, where it's you start at a certain point, you want something, enter an unfamiliar situation, adapt to it, get what you want, pay a heavy price for it, and then return to where you started as a changed person. Maybe the wish is that we could finally get to a point in human history where we could skip that pay a heavy price for it step, that we could just learn to be better. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the really fascinating part about history, anthropology, and fiction, because it's a reflection of the time that they're written and the perceptions. And I think it's really important to tie back to the idea of written words, that you have someone who's interested, and that these memories or events and incidents are kept alive, so that hopefully we trim down the need of keep, for lack of a better term, beating our face against the wall before we learn a lesson and then move on.
Yeah, absolutely. We got way off track there, but that is fine.
I'm having a lot of fun with this, by the way. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I am too. Come back literally anytime. This is a lot of fun for this. Tzu-Hao, what is your writing kryptonite? What is something that, if it happens, that's just going to end your writing productivity today? And why is it your children?
No, a bad pen. No.
Bad pen.
A bad pen will do me in. I find when I'm writing, pardon the children. It's really important for me to feel like physically I'm also involved in the process. So frequently how I write is I'll draft the skeletal structures and how I think it's going to go, and knows about the character, and I flesh it out on the screen. So the bulk of my creation happens on pen and paper. So if that flow is interrupted, I physically feel interrupted.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand that. What was your favorite childhood book?
That one is tough. My grandfather used to regularly read me 3 out of 4 of the old Chinese classics. My favorite was probably Journey to the West. So it's a huge allegory of, achieving peace and growth as a person. But so there is a monk and 3 monsters that he picks up along the way that, become heroes towards the end of the journey. But most of the stories that are still fairly commonly put into cinema or TV series, even after hundreds of years. And most of it focuses on a couple of the famous scenarios that they go through on their journey to the West, literally. So it's basically a monk from China going to India to get a very important scripture to save his country. But yeah, that was probably my favorite because my grandfather used to read it to me all the time. And he'd read either because this piece was written hundreds of years ago. So there's the old language that when I was younger, I probably didn't understand. So he would actually interpret the content for me as he's reading it for me. So then there's, hand puppets and all that kind of stuff to go with it. It's very, very, very dear memories for me.
I was going to say, that sounds really charming. That sounds lovely. Awesome.
And what did you think, Richard?
Trying to think about kind of what led or had perhaps made a lasting impact on me in terms of what was read. Both of my parents did a lot of reading with my sister and I before bedtime. So just a lot of positive memories, positive associations with all of that. I'm just trying to think about which story perhaps made the biggest impression. I'm going to say Hansel and Gretel. I believe that that was one that had left a lasting impression. I don't know if the reason is as warm and fuzzy as I might want it to be. They actually read me my dad read me the original version by the Brothers Grimm. So it was very, not so warm and so fuzzy, but very intriguing and captivating at the time it was read to me.
Stories.
Right? Yes.
I love that. I feel like in the 90s we've lost this ability to be like, man, kids, it's good to scare kids. Scare the kids, like the Don
exactly
movies.
There you go.
There you go.
With the oral history in the Caribbean, my dad talks a lot about when he was growing up, kind of hearing about this man in the cane, the man who resided in the cane fields. And of course, Barbados, like a lot of other Caribbean islands, have extensive cane fields. And certainly when they're, at full growth, they're super, super high. And obviously someone could be fully standing and you would not even see them maybe a matter of feet in front of you. And there was supposedly a man who lived in the cane who, of course, came out when, Matt, at night, of course, and would take children who'd never be seen again, and perhaps their remains or bones found years later in the cane fields. And now, of course, parents were telling their kids these stories for what reason? So they would not sneak out of the home at night, right? So in retrospect, obviously, Dad can look back on it and laugh now. I can assure you, I don't think him or my uncles or aunts were laughing when they were terrified being told these stories as kids, right? So there you go. The ways that lore can be used to try to maybe hamper or prevent unwanted behavior as well too, right? Cautionary tales. There you go.
From Newfoundland that's and from some part of England that's specific to like these regions kind of thing. But I was told it growing up, and my wife, everyone thought that it was just something my nan made up.
Yeah.
I found out recently it's a real like Newfoundland folklore thing.
Oh, okay.
Very similar, called the Bread Man, who is a man that lives in the hills, and the Crust Man. And if you don't eat your crust, he'll come at you at night and take you up into the hills, and he's got a big bag of all the moldy crust that children didn't eat, and he forces you to eat them all.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is some very vivid imagery right here, Matt. That's was it enough to get you to eat those bread crusts? Is the question?
Oh yeah.
Hands down, right?
Although it never made sense to me, because it does this, and Nan would get so mad at me, but I'm 6 years old. I'm like, but if he does this to every kid that doesn't eat the crust, wouldn't the bag always be empty?
Well, this is what I'm thinking.
Like,
right?
If the bag is the uneaten crust, there would never be uneaten crust, because
this is a very good point. That is correct. But you see, as kids, we're not even really taking it to task that way, are we? We're just completely digesting it as it is given it to us. We are not questioning a thing, right? So it works. I'm telling you. Up until a certain point, it works. Right? That is it. Absolutely. Yes.
And what did you think, Lisa?
Yes, I think one of the favorite books I read to my child, one of my children, was Harry Potter. And then I know that sounds like an obvious answer, but it was a time, because those books were so fast, it meant that we were together for a long, long time. And my son would, he would just say, keep reading, and I would go hoarse reading. And that the memory of that time spent together, just sharing that story and having to read on myself because it would, the plot twists were so much fun. And, just the sheer feeling of exhaustion from having read aloud for more than an hour, that was a thrilling experience.
I don't think I've ever been more jealous of a child. Like to have Harry Potter read to you by Lisa Moore. I'm now very upset that audiobook pairing doesn't exist.
Well,
Okay.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I would say so, yeah. And what did you think, Xavier?
Oh my gosh. It's definitely Dolphin Tales. Childhood, what age of childhood?
Any. And before 15.
Okay, before 15, definitely Dolphin Tales. Oh my gosh, I was obsessed. But I was also like 6 or 7 or 8, but there was like 5 of those books, and they were like weird picture books, but they're like little chapter picture books about these dolphins. But yeah.
I don't know what that is. Was that a thing? Like a series? Like Dolphin Tales?
I think it was a series. Maybe it was like a Scholastic series or something. One of those it was like 5 books. It was a series of books. Oh, I remember reading them like so much.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
If your existence as a writer, your writing this was somehow magically transformed into an animal, what animal would that be?
Magically transformed. Well, I'm going to say a unicorn because first of all, we're talking about magic, and why not? And second of all, it's my favorite animal. We're talking about animals and magic. But yeah, they're mythical, they're rare. I'm not saying my writing is rare and mythical at all. But they're special. And I don't know, maybe my writing is special.
I think so.
As a unicorn, a little diamond in their froth. Sounds
great.
That's ridiculous.
It is, and I love it. It is, yes. I love it.
Oh my
gosh. That's the weirdest question.
Wow.
All right. And what did you think, Sue? What animal would that be?
Oh, that's an interesting one. A very sentimental chimera.
Okay. That is the second fictional animal from this one. Your writing compatriot Xavier said it was a unicorn.
Okay.
I'm interested to see if we'll get all imaginary beasts. It's going to be fun. Yep. Okay. And what did you think, Lisa?
Okay, I'm just going to go way out there on this one.
Okay.
Matthew. So I don't know if you've seen that little video that went viral. Apparently the man who made it had recently died, and it was one of the first videos to go viral, so it's very famous. And he is shooting with his video camera, a double rainbow.
Okay. Oh, yes.
And he is he seems to be alone. He is experiencing, whether it's drug induced or it is simply solitude induced, or whether it really is the sublime in nature. For a long and extended period, he is crying and laughing about the beauty of these two rainbows, and he's asking, what does it mean? And as we listen to it, I think as anybody would listen, if you listen to the whole thing, you find yourself laughing and you find yourself close to tears, because you recognize through his basically wild sounds how he is feeling rainbows, how he is affected by nature, how he's affected by something that you, by the end of the video, which is not very long, you have come to think of as a miracle too. And so I'm going to say my avatar will be a double rainbow.
Okay. Not the double rainbow guy, but you're the double rainbow itself.
I was going to go with the double rainbow guy, but that might be... maybe it's actually the double rainbow that I'm not quite sure, Matthew.
All right. Sounds good. That's probably the best answer we've had to that question. That needs to be like the name of a collection later on down the road, like Double Rainbow or something. I don't know. I am the Double Rainbow, something.
Oh, good.
And what did you think, Richard?
This is, wow, that is a fascinating question, and one I have truly never been even remotely asked before. Wow.
The look on your face right now is wonderful.
It's not very often that people ask or tell me things that surprise me, Matt. You have accomplished that. Here we are.
Yeah.
What would I, wow. Wow, what would I say? I've always been a big fan of big cats. My sign is Leo, so I've always been a big fan. So maybe a lion, and I guess not. I'm thinking not lion in predatory mode per se, actively hunting, blood and guts dripping from the jaws. Not so much that, but more so maybe in its quiet state. A lion kind of in the shade under a tree, kind of just majestic, quiet, low key, calm and relaxed, comfortable in its own skin, and just quiet knowledge of self, just taking it all in. How about that?
So I would to imagine is how it is most of the time.
There we go. Right. So that's maybe would be my answer to that. And thanks for a question that was not very predictable at all. That was, wow. That is a first, Matt. Absolutely.
I would like to thank you for giving an answer that was a real animal, because your other two compatriots from the Quilted Collection said a unicorn and a griffin.
Well, look at this. Far more creative than I love these answers already. And I can't wait to hear and see why they said that as well, too. Sometimes
when people say mythical animals for things, it's like God bless them, but like Scotland having their national animal be a unicorn. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. This isn't that kind of test. What are you thinking? I didn't know we were going to make stuff up.
Oh boy.
Does writing energize you or does it exhaust you? Is it a thing where, when you've written, suddenly you've got all this energy from the process, or are you just coming out of it like a husk?
Wow. I would say overall, it's invigorating, intellectually challenging to write, and I do love it. There are times though when you are hitting a bit of a brick wall and it is extremely frustrating. And again, for my colleagues who are actually professional writers and do this for a living, I can't even imagine how they actually tackle that on a regular basis, especially when kind of your income is on the line as well too with what you're producing. As someone who's done it more so as a hobby, obviously that pressure doesn't exist, but it can still be extremely frustrating when you're just like, oh, where do I go from here? Right. So I would say that overall, cumulatively, I would say yes, it is energizing and I love to do it. But there are some times where you hit that drought of ideas and language and you're just like, oh, inspiration, please now. Right. So I can relate. Yeah.
And what did you think, Xaiver?
I would say a bit of both. I would definitely say a bit of both. There's definitely the times when I finish a chapter and I'm like, yes. I finish it and I'm like, that was great. That came out so organically. I'm like, yes, that is it. That's what it needs to be. And there are times where I'm just like, wow. No, I think mostly in editing. And after editing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to die. Why did I write all of these things? It's garbage. But after the writing, usually I think I have energized.
Cool.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That's common. Yeah. Where people are like, no, the editing is what drains me. And I'm like, yeah. Horrible.
And what did you think, Sue?
Both, depending on the scenario. So, I mean, like when you're building a scene or a character, like there are some aspects of it that's very exciting. Like when I'm getting to know a character, like sometimes because I've ventured a little bit into plays. So like I'll say, you know, for instance, be stuck for a little bit, and I'll start having a conversation, and that conversation takes off, and then suddenly I learn so much more about these characters, and then you hit this absolutely optimal place where, like, you know, it makes sense to end this. And then after that, I'm like, I'm exhausted. I've been here for 3 hours. I don't know how the time passed. I'm invigorated by the growth and how much I've gotten to know these people on paper or on a screen, depending on how you write. But now I feel like I've given some parts of me, and you know, the physical energy of doing it is also exhausting. So it's a little bit of both.
Big time. Okay, makes sense. For me, it's editing. The editing is exhausting. The writing, yeah.
It takes a very special breed to be an editor, I think.
But like, it doesn't say good things that, like, I like writing my work but not reading it. Like, sometimes when I'm like, oh man, I don't want to read this, I'm like, why would I put this out into the world? If I don't want to read it and I wrote it, why would I have the balls to say anyone else should read it?
I think it's, you know, it's giving yourself and the piece of space. I find sometimes, like, you know, what's that term? Like, you know how if you build a new house, you have to give it a couple of years for the wood to settle in?
Sure.
It's sort of the same concept for me sometimes when it comes to writing. Like, I'll write a piece that when I walk away from, like, it's perfect, knowing, of course, I'm going to have to circle back and make some changes, because I am incapable of writing something perfect on the first try, and I'm sure most people can't. So I give myself that breathing room, and I give that piece of breathing room. And then when I go back into it, to whether it's to edit or to add, like, it gives me a more fresh perspective, and I'm rested, and I can be a little more critical of it, and then look for some details, and then can tell myself that, you know what, that was a very interesting scenario that you just presented. Why don't we expand a little more and build on that? Because, you know, you've just seen a little sparkle in something. Now let's polish it and bring it out.
Nice. I like it. What is something that you love that you would give up in order to be a better writer? So pretend this is a, I don't know, deal with the devil kind of situation. You can be an amazing writer who's got a wonderful career and everything you ever wanted, but you have to give up something you love. What is that thing, and would you do it?
Can it be as inconsequential as peanut butter?
If you love it. I mean, this opens up a moral question of, if you give it up, did you really love it?
So, I mean, if I have to really think about things that are important and, you know, triggered by me, I would probably say no. Yeah. Those are the kids. The kids have not.
I would like to congratulate you, because they're the reason I thought about that, because you are the first person with children to be on the show who did not say, oh yeah, I'd give up my children. I'm like, what?
Oh, what? Oh,
what's wrong with you? What is?
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, yeah. But I think they're coming at it from the point of view of, like, oh, I'd get so much more writing done. And I'm like, yeah, but
no. Actually, I really enjoy. Wow. Now I'm really thinking about it. Oh, I could do a Little Mermaid and give on my voice. I don't need to talk. I can talk this way.
Interesting. Okay.
I do like to sing, so that would be something I'd have to give up. But just because I can't sing doesn't mean I can't still enjoy other people's performances.
Okay.
So if that's, you know, if that passes, I could totally do a Little Mermaid.
For me, it's food. I would absolutely, if I could still live but never have to eat again and not, like, waste away, I would do. I hate taking the time out to eat.
Wow,
like,
that is an incredible sacrifice. I love food, so that would absolutely not be able to give that up.
Yeah, most people look at me like I'm a robot when I say that. But then again, I don't really love it. I actually don't like it, so that's not giving up something I love. So it's like, you know, it's giving up something that I think someone else loves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Horrible.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.